When your own mind begins to betray you, when your most precious memories start slipping through your fingers like sand, you become willing to make a deal with the devil. Even if the devil is a man like him, the last memory thief. Elias woke with a chilling sensation that something was missing. It wasn't a dream forgotten upon waking. It was the memory of his mother's face, a constant in his mind for 30 years, now replaced by a blurred, featureless silhouette. It was the third memory to vanish that week. The doctors called it rapid associative amnesia, a rare and cruel condition that didn't just erase events, but systematically dismantled the person you were, one memory at a time. Desperate, and with nowhere else to turn, he sought out the man spoken of only in whispers in the darkest corners of the internet. Lysander, a recluse who lived in a weather-beaten house on the edge of the salt marshes. They said he could find lost memories. They never said what it cost. The house smelled of salt, decay, and old paper. Lysander was a gaunt man with eyes that seemed to have witnessed too many pasts that weren't his own. "I don't find memories, Mr. Thorne," Lysander corrected, his voice a low rasp. "I retrieve them. I am a thief. And like any thief, I require payment." Elias, his heart pounding with a mixture of hope and dread, agreed. The price was not money. It was a memory, one of equal emotional weight to the one he wished to retrieve. A fair trade, Lysander called it. To get back the memory of his mother's face, Elias would have to surrender the memory of the first time he told his childhood sweetheart he loved her. The process was not scientific. It was an art. Lysander used a complex device of his own invention, a contraption of brass, glass, and glowing filaments he called the resonator. It didn't probe the brain. It resonated with the echo, a memory left in the soul. As Elias sat in the worn leather chair, focusing on the hollow space where his mother's face should be, Lysander worked. The room grew cold. Elias felt a strange pulling sensation, not in his head, but deep in his chest. And then, it was gone. The giddy, nervous, beautiful feeling of his 16-year-old self confessing his love to Clara under the old oak tree. A tear rolled down his cheek for a loss he could no longer remember. But in its place, like a phantom limb, was a new memory. His mother, smiling, her eyes crinkling at the corners, handing him a freshly baked cookie. The relief was so profound it was dizzying. He returned the next week, and the week after that. Each time, he traded a precious piece of his past to reclaim another. He got back the memory of his father teaching him to ride a bike, but lost the memory of his college graduation. He recovered the scent of his grandmother's perfume, but surrendered the feeling of holding his newborn niece for the first time. He was rebuilding himself, but with gaping holes in his history. He was becoming a patchwork man, and with each trade, he noticed a change in himself. The emotions tied to the lost memories were gone too. He could remember the facts. I graduated college. I held my niece. But the joy, the pride, the love were absent. He was becoming hollowed out. During one session, as Lysander was retrieving a memory of a family Christmas, the resonator flickered violently. A memory not his own flashed in Elias's mind. A young Lysander, weeping over the grave of a woman, his hand clutching a locket. In that moment, Elias understood. Lysander wasn't just a thief. He was a collector. He wasn't deleting these memories. He was storing them, hoarding them, living through the emotions he stole from others because he had none of his own left. He had traded them all away long ago to save someone else, and was now cursed to live as an emotional vampire. The next time Elias came, desperate to retrieve the memory of his own wedding day, he confronted him. "You keep them, don't you? You feel what we can't anymore." Lysander didn't deny it. His facade of cold professionalism cracked, revealing a bottomless well of loneliness. "You cannot understand the silence of your own soul, Mr. Thorne. I would give anything to feel a genuine emotion again, even grief. This." He gestured to his machine. "This is just an echo, a portrait of a feast to a starving man." Elias realized the ultimate tragedy. He was trading his living, emotional past for sterile, recalled images, while Lysander was surrounded by a treasury of feeling he could never truly own, Elias made a final, desperate proposal. He would make one last trade, his biggest yet. He would give Lysander the memory that started his amnesia, the traumatic memory of the car accident that had triggered his condition, a memory so painful his mind had begun to erase everything to escape it. In return, Lysander had to give him back every single memory he had stolen. He would take the pain. Lysander, his eyes wide with a hunger for a feeling so raw and real, agreed. The process was agonizing. Elias relived the screeching tires, the shattering glass, the overwhelming fear. He felt it all, and as he did, he felt his other memories rushing back to him. Clara's confession, his graduation pride, the warmth of his niece. They were whole again, imbued with their original emotion. He was whole again. As the session ended, Elias, weeping with the pain of the accident but also with the joy of being himself again, looked at Lysander. The memory thief was slumped in his chair, a single, genuine tear tracing a path through the dust on his cheek. He was finally feeling something, even if it was a pain so profound it would likely destroy him. Elias left the house on the marsh, the morning sun warm on his face. He was broken, but he was complete. He had learned that a life with pain is better than a life without a past. And in that weathered house, the last memory thief sat in the growing silence, finally, tragically, feeling the weight of a real memory and understanding the true cost of the trade he had made with his own humanity long ago. The world outside Lysander's marsh-bound house was unbearably vivid. The green of the leaves seemed sharper, the song of a distant bird more poignant. For Elias, every sensation was now anchored by a restored past. The memory of the car accident was a raw, open wound in his mind, but around it, the tapestry of his life was whole again. He could look at his wife, Clara, and feel the full, untarnished cascade of emotions from their first kiss to the quiet comfort of their morning coffee. He was, for the first time in months, truly present. But with presence came a gnawing guilt. He had left a man drowning in a pain he himself could barely withstand. The image of Lysander's tear-streaked face, a mask of long-forgotten agony, haunted him. A week later, driven by a complex mix of pity and responsibility, Elias returned to the marshes. The house seemed even more forlorn, as if burdened by the new, terrible memory it contained. He found Lysander not in his study, but sitting on the rickety porch, staring into the mist with hollow eyes. "You're still here," Elias said softly. Lysander didn't look at him. "Where else would I go? This pain, it is a cage. It is all I can see, all I can feel. Your other memories, they are pale ghosts next to it." He finally turned his gaze to Elias, and the depth of suffering there was staggering. "You did not just give me a memory. You gave me a soul, and it is a cursed thing." Elias began visiting regularly, not as a client, but as a witness. He would bring food, which Lysander often forgot to eat. He would talk about his wife, his work, mundane things, simply to fill the oppressive silence. He realized, trying to teach Lysander how to be human again. He was showing him that a life was not defined by a single, searing pain, but by the multitude of smaller moments that surrounded it. During one visit, Lysander, his hands trembling, made a confession. The resonator, it was never just for theft. It was my attempt to cure my own condition. I was the first to suffer from this amnesia decades ago. In my desperation to stop it, I built this machine, but I only made myself a monster. He looked at the complex device with revulsion. "I believe I was wrong. I don't think it retrieves memories. I think it translates the soul's echo of them. And in doing so, it can be calibrated. I was using it like a bludgeon, but it could be a scalpel." A wild, dangerous hope began to bloom in the stale air of the house. What if they could use the resonator not to trade, but to heal? What if Lysander could learn to integrate the traumatic memory, to process it rather than be consumed by it? And what if Elias, whose own amnesia had been halted by the recovery of his core identity, held the key? Their roles were now reversed. Elias became the anchor and Lysander the patient. It was a terrifying, uncharted process. Lysander would sit in the leather chair, and Elias would operate the resonator, not to pull a memory out, but to help Lysander navigate the one within. They didn't try to erase the accident. Instead, guided by Elias's own experience of integrating his returned memories, they used the machine to contextualize it. Elias would project his own strong, positive memories, the safety of his mother's hug, the triumph of his graduation, the profound love for his wife, into the session. The resonator would weave these emotional frequencies around the sharp, shattered edges of the traumatic memory, creating a buffer, a narrative that said, "This horrible thing happened, but look at all the life that exists around it. You are more than this single moment." It was agony for Lysander. He would scream and convulse, reliving the accident while simultaneously being flooded with feelings of love and safety he had not felt in half a lifetime. It was a brutal cognitive dissonance, a war for his soul. But slowly, painstakingly, the memory began to change. It didn't become less terrible, but it became manageable. It became a part of him, not the whole of him. The man who emerged from the process was not the cold, predatory thief, nor the broken victim of pain. He was someone new, someone quieter, bearing the scars of both. The resonator now sat silent, its purpose fulfilled. Lysander looked at Elias, his eyes clear for the first time. "You gave me back more than you took," he said, his voice steady. "You gave me a choice." He walked over to the machine that had defined his life, placed a hand on its cold brass surface, and then unplugged it forever. He did not become a saint. The loneliness was still there, a familiar companion. But now he had his own single, integrated memory, a memory of pain, yes, but also a memory of redemption and human connection. It was enough to build on. Elias left the marshes for the last time, knowing he would not return. He had his life back. And Lysander, the former memory thief, now simply the keeper of his own single, painful, and ultimately human memory, watched him go. He then turned and walked into his house, not as a prison, but as a place where he could finally begin, for the first time, to live in his own present, haunted no longer by the ghosts of other people's pasts. The trade was finally, truly over.